click it. And we're live. It is Wednesday, September 1st, 2021, 5:02 p.m. It is the 11th anniversary of the founding of Lawfare. It is.
You've had all kinds of anniversaries. Tammy, Lawfare. I interrupted you, but that's a big week for you.
You know, I'm not that the 11th anniversary of Lawfare is
29th
that big a deal,
anniversary,
but it is the 364 days before the first anniversary of the final withdrawal from Afghanistan. I'm going to skip at the John McWhorter profanity grammar point today because it so irritated Kate yesterday. It
wasn't irritating. I just was pointing out I had nothing to do with it, and neither did anyone else.
It was as we say in law school. It was a process point.
It was exactly.
Yes, it was a process point, meaning please don't do this again tomorrow. It was substantive due process. See what I did there, Scott?
I did.
Yeah.
Using it about as correctly as the Supreme Court these days.
Yeah. So, those of you who voted that I would be, the one without the dog shirt today, get a special gold star. Those of you who voted that Pete Strzok would show up not in a dog shirt, not in ragtag, bullshit garb, but in formal wear, get a special gold star. There are only 4 of the former and 6 of the latter, and I haven't identified anyone who got 2 gold stars today. We are not allowed to have fun anymore. The Delta variant is raging across the country. Ron DeSantis may be our next president, but we are allowed to have Pete Strzok here to begin plotting the coup against the next horrible people.
Too soon. Too maybe not soon enough. Too soon, but not soon enough. I don't know what the right answer is there to that.
Pete, welcome back. You are among the top vote getters of the Bring Them the Fuck Back for the 500th anniversary, 500th episode celebration. We are in part 3 of of our 500th episode. What do you have to say for yourself?
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Ben. It was appreciate the votes from the Academy, and consequently my speech is ready to give. But it's good to be here, and I'm glad that it doesn't seem like that long, and I'm impressed that when we were first talking when you started, I remember, I think, telling you there's no way you make it past 8 or 9 months, and yet here we are, a year and a half later.
As long as there is COVID, there will be in lieu of fun.
I'm ready for fun, Ben. I'm ready for fun. This is like
I'm ready for fun too. The fun ain't up to me.
I just want to say that, when this all started 500 episodes ago, as long as there was COVID, it did not seem like that was how that we defined this. Because, Rick, is it ever? It's small. It's here to stay forever. It's kind of like smallpox into a small radical bunch of people in outside of LA, mommy communities decide to stop getting the smallpox and measles vaccines or something like that. No.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's right. I mean, I think the Today Show started because of the common cold, and they haven't been able to
that's right.
finish it.
And Colbert started because of Lyme disease.
Can I actually ask a question? Wait.
By the way, I'm not sure if that's a lie or not.
Total lie.
Okay, it was a good lie.
Just made it up as I went along. I started the sentence and a talk show came out, and I continued the sentence, and a communicable disease came out.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you taught without a mask today, but and I've been working at this co-working space without a mask, and I just got back from there. There is this guy who works 30 feet from me. And it's there's not too many people in the room, and it's well ventilated, and I could put on a mask and stuff. But who's 30 feet away from me and is just sneezing and like sniffling really congestedly
Ooh.
all day while sitting and working his computer. And
This is what a slingshot is for.
like, I'm not a passive aggressive person. I don't want to go and like say something. Like I'll just go up to him and say something. But like, do you go up to them and say something? And also like, I mean, it's allergy season. So like, should I assume that of course it's allergies? Because no one would be so horrible as to be sick and be coming in. Like
I don't know. So people have proven to be slightly horrible. So I would be cautious.
I know. Kate still has her faith in humanity.
Not totally horrible, but there are some.
How you couldn't even complete that sentence without laughing.
By the way, I mean, I noticed on a plane, because I just took a plane, how few people were coughing and sneezing, and I sneezed once on the way out there, and I felt like I
The Eye of Sauron turned towards you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
So-
so I think that's really bad, Kate. That
I never
somebody's doing
sneeze, just as a matter of principle, but I do have a kind of asthmatic cough.
I've heard
That-
you sneeze.
No, you've never heard me. I don't
Really?
sneeze.
Okay.
No, of course not.
How do you do that as a matter of principle?
It's not a matter. I'm joking.
Oh.
I
Okay.
sneeze as much as anybody else, or as little as anybody else.
On a
But
roll, Ben,
I
between
haven't-
this and Cold
You're
Bear, it's
lying.
going to be
So-
like, you know,
you're lying so well today.
I have a kind of chronic asthmatic cough, and sometimes, I'm sitting in a public place coughing, and I'm like trying to project no, this isn't a COVID cough. This is an asthmatic cough that long predates COVID. Shut the fuck up and look somewhere else, because, this is just how I am. I cough sometimes. And people don't seem to understand the telepathic communication of that.
Do you remember when John Bordeaux got you the fully vaxxed hat? You need
Wow,
to have one that says like you can put it like you can kind of rotate it around your head in it says 4 sayings, and one of them is like it's just allergies, and then on the other side it's like
That is such a good product. 4 directional.
yeah. And you can just
And
be
one
like,
of them should be communicable and directed at you.
I mean, one
that's this, Ben.
could one panel say, yes, I know that guac is extra and I consent to pay for it? I have to say, that drives me nuts.
What if we had a hat that you could control the message with your iPhone?
Oh, like an electronic board.
Yeah, like you type into your iPhone what the hat is going to say, and it just goes across it. So usually it would say, we're not allowed to have fun anymore, but in lieu of fun. But sometimes it would say communicable and directed at you. And sometimes it would say...
I really want a t-shirt that says that with my middle finger.
I know the guac is extra. Like it could
What if
really
you walk into a faculty meeting with I know the guac is extra going across your report.
sign a release, put it on file with the restaurant.
So, Pete, when you were at the FBI Academy, did you ever imagine yourself on a show having this kind of highbrow conversation?
No,
That this
never.
is why you were doing it? Because
Yeah.
someday, you'd get fired from the FBI and you'd become a celebrity and you'd be able to hang out with people in dog shirts?
From my house because of a pandemic and
Right.
yeah, no,
With a
none of this,
martini.
none of this. Joking about whether or not it's too early or too late to begin the response to the DeSantis administration in 2024. No, never.
Okay,
Never
just
in 1,000
checking.
years.
Because
Yeah.
if you had planned the whole thing, that would be really impressive. That would be good career
Yeah.
planning.
No, never. And that was the odd thing. I mean, there are people, and I don't know if it's true in every profession. There are occasional agents who would sit there and you would talk to them, whether you're 2 of their career or you're 20, and they would have everything planned out. I'm going to, or I did this to this to this to this to this, and I don't understand how anybody progresses through life with such certainty. And part of that is you need to be willing to take jobs or do things that aren't ideal, because you've got to have some sort of sense of guarantee that you're going to be able to do it. So, if I'm going to get, it's some esoteric or very hard to get job, you can't plan on getting that or not. But if you're shooting for the median, you can plan with some level of certainty. And it always surprised me that people, in 25 years I'm going to be X, and sure enough they were X. And
well, I only knew two people in my early life who knew exactly what they wanted to be in life. One was my mad crush in 9th grade, Susan Kay, who I will keep her last name out of it for reasons of her own dignity and mine. And Susan Kay knew in 9th grade, this is going to sound super weird, especially to the law professors and students, she knew that she wanted to be a patent lawyer and study law at James Madison University, which was a place that I had never heard of in 9th grade.
Those are attainable things.
They are.
Yes. To my point about the median, not,
Yes, and I remember the odd thing about...
And I feel badly already, because I don't mean to denigrate in any implication or other way. Susan?
No, Susan Kay. The closest she's never, I think she wouldn't, I'm sure she's driven by James Madison University.
Driven by in a car, driven by sense of motive
no,
force
driven
within
by.
herself.
She is a homemaker somewhere in Georgia. She wouldn't know a patent if she tripped over one on the street.
How do you know she's a homemaker in Georgia, Ben?
That's what Facebook is good for.
Interesting.
And then the other one, which is contrast in this, who I will name because it's such a super cool story, is Leonora Neville. And Leonora, I met.
I love her name.
She was a freshman at Yale, where she was the roommate of a very, very close friend of mine. And Leonora, who looks like a Wagnerian heroine, sort of Brunhilde kind of look going, told me the first time we ever met, when she was 17 or 18, that she wanted to be a Byzantine historian and do her dissertation about the Crusades. And Leonora Neville is currently a professor of Byzantine history at the University of Wisconsin.
She's written
a number of books about the Crusades. And
you have a strong both Yale and Wisconsin
academic
nexus on this show.
Well,
the Yale thing is we should have Leonora on the show.
We should have.
That's like a fascinating. Absolutely.
Most people, I think, are a little bit more like Susan Kay than who know exactly what they want to do in life.
It's really funny that you use these examples, because I had this my best friend growing up, ended up being for, I don't know, she was for 20 years, and now we've kind of lost touch, but we're still. Anyways, we were sitting next to each other in 6th grade, in the first week of 6th grade, and there was some weird standardized exam that they were having us take that was about what we wanted to do with our careers and everything. And at one point, the question was when you graduate from college, which is more important for you to do? Get a job or get married. And I was obviously get a job, because how am I going to eat if I haven't if I can't meet people, if I haven't eaten anything for and Rachel, my best friend, and this is how we met, this is kind of telling that I would pick someone to be my best friend. She put get married, and she did. She got married before she graduated from Cornell. She actually got married to her 7th grade. He was first my 7th grade boyfriend, and then he was her 7th grade boyfriend. But she married him. They got married, and that was they have 5 kids. They run a daycare center.
That's actually high drama in 7th grade. I'm surprised that you stayed in touch with each other after that switch from her or you to her. He was your boyfriend first, yes?
Yeah, Robbie Johnson.
Have you forgiven her?
Seventh grade romance is a traumatic big deal. My God!
Yeah.
That's
and
then
that's beat the boy as a father. That's
yeah. I remember I told this story at their wedding when she was 21 and he was 20, and we were like, I couldn't believe they were getting married, and I thought everyone kind of thought it was a little bit nuts, including their parents.
And so you son of a bitch, just 10 years ago, you were holding my hand. No, not that.
Yeah, I remember.
Because that would be a great wedding speech.
No, but I remember being on like the 7th grade trip. You know how you could go on like a music trip? It was like the 7th grade music trip, like with chorus or whatever. And we were like, going to Montreal. And I remember her sitting on the edge of the bed in the hotel room that we're sharing with like 3 other girls, and her just like crying that she couldn't just marry Robbie right now in 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
And that she wanted to that she like didn't know how she was going to be able to wait that long. And it was just like, it's just like a crazy, like, I don't know. I love that story.
I'm sorry, just her.
Yeah.
They're both brilliant people. They're really smart.
Oh, so they ended up marrying each other.
Yeah. They married each other.
Wow.
And it's still everything going great,
5
happy.
Kids, they're really great. I visited them.
That's amazing. That's like one of those
like a small
reassess
town.
every.
I interviewed it, like I had a job talk when I was on the entry level market in one of the town that they live in, because they live in like a college town. And I hadn't seen them in 15 years, and it was like no time had passed at all. We had dinner. Their kids were completely insane and running all over the house. And I was just like, this is great. Like, I don't know. It was really fun. So anyway.
Wow.
I want to ask everyone, what did you guys all want to be when you were younger? Or the youngest you can remember saying, I want to do this when I grow up.
That's
Scott wanted to be an inclusive legal positivist.
Oh no!
And that was the thing that really, his failure in that regard is really one of the things that's defined him.
Yeah, that explains my anger towards him. I'm dying to hear what Pete wanted to be.
The first I think I remember is wanting to do. I loved airplanes, everything about aviation, the idea of being an engineer and working in designing something aerospace related was like that first sense of like, this is neat, and I would like, to pursue this, to do it. And obviously ended up radically 180 degrees off of that. So
Did you do like model planes like as a hobby?
Yeah, all of that, like model planes, model rockets, all the stuff that you sit there and you build.
No, but I mean now.
Some not recently, but yeah, no, there was a time where I did had like remote control airplanes and building them out of balsa wood and putting the little plastic over the airfoils to make it and the remote control systems and putting in all the servos. So I did that, and then it just gets that you hit that point where between family, kids, job, that any sort of outside hobby becomes, time prohibitive in a certain sense, and so that kind of went by the wayside. And who knows? At some point, I may pick that back up. But
you also grew up kind of all over the world, right? You were born in Iran.
No, born here. But yeah, no. So my father was in the military, and then we moved all over the place. He had one tour in Iran in '73 and '74. He retired in '78 and did development work and so we were in Africa, we were in Haiti. We went back to Iran '78, '79 when he was working for Bell Helicopter, but we moved a lot, so there was a lot of just very transient feel to the whole experience.
So your dad did work in designing flying machines then?
He did. I mean, he was an engineer, so some of it was he had worked in Iran with the army and kind of working with them and their armed forces as in the U.S. Army, and then retiring after that, going back and working for Bell Helicopter because there was a lot of just everything that we'd sold to the Iranian government at the time, and that support, that interaction he had pursued post army, and figured that was not what motivated him, not what he found a passion in, and so he went back, got his degree at University of Minnesota in public policy, went into development work, and spent the balance of his second career, if you will, kind of doing that sort of work. So he found very fulfilling, and it was interesting. But again, to Ben's point, it varied. We moved, probably, I don't know that I lived anywhere for more than 18 months before I went to college. So there was a lot of moving around.
And how did you end up? So you were in the Army for a while, and then you ended up in the Bureau. What was the trajectory that took you from Army to college to Bureau? Like, what was the basic career trajectory?
If you're allowed to tell us.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And if you're not allowed to tell us, just make it up.
No, yeah, or make it up. Like, yes, it was Colbert and the Lions. They got me into.
I've watched the Bureau. I know you can just kind of create a legend on the spot if you need to.
No, so I went to Georgetown on an RTC scholarship, so that was great in that it paid for Georgetown, and it was great that it provided a job immediately after graduation. And so, went out, got through Georgetown, went to the 101st Airborne with the Army, spent 4 years there, which was service commitment. That for the 4 years of the scholarship, you have 4 years active duty. Enjoyed it, would absolutely do the Army again, 10 times out of 10, but also, was not, as, spending a couple of years, by probably the second year, said, okay, this is not what I want to do for a career. It's very fulfilling. It's absolutely something that I would never experience in terms of exposure to work and people that were not something that I otherwise would have. And so the value was extraordinary, but at the same time, it wasn't something I wanted to spend a career doing. And left in 1995, left the Army. They had just, Timmy McVeigh and Terry Nichols had bombed Oklahoma City. That trial was still underway or getting ready to go, and Congress, sort of doing oversight of the FBI, said, hey, look, this caught you a little bit unawares. You need to improve your intelligence capability. You need to enhance your analytic base. And so we're going to give you a bunch of money to hire 60 analysts. And so I was sitting in a condo in Boston reading the Washington Post, and there's a little ad saying, the FBI is hiring analysts to do counterterrorism. And I thought, no, that sounds really interesting. So I applied, was accepted. The 60 of us, 30 went to work international terrorism, 30 went to work domestic terrorism, which I did. Realized very quickly that the FBI was, at that time, still is a little bit, but at that time was really, really an agent-centric organization, and knew that being an agent seemed to be fascinating and extraordinary. So applied and was accepted, went down to Quantico in 98, and there I spent 20 years.
Wow.
And I know what every member of the audience is thinking right now. At least everyone who knows that you worked on the illegals case. The illegals case being the case that the show The Americans is based on.
Oh.
Oh wait, what?
Well, I didn't
know that.
That's wild. I had no
it's
idea.
One of Pete's cases.
Well, then hold on. Like, back way the heck up.
Whoa.
Whoa.
What they said.
So I got all the dog shirts excited. So
We're howling for more information.
Here's the two-part
Dumbledore.
question. The two-part question. Have you seen the show? I know the answer to this. And if you have, is it accurate? That's the first question. And the second is, would it be fun to do a podcast with the creators of the show?
So the first answer is no, so I can't answer whether or not it's accurate. The second question...
Why, because you haven't seen the show? Is that why?
I have not seen it.
Oh,
I don't have a desire to see it because I worry that I'm incapable of separating artistic and dramatic merit from the realism when it's something that I've done. If it's something that I know about but wasn't something I was intimately involved with, I could probably suspend my disbelief and just enjoy it. And this isn't to say, I understand, and people I respect their taste and judgment say it's excellent. It is dramatically great, it is compelling, it is engrossing, and I believe that, but I don't think from my perspective of my involvement that I would be able to enjoy it without sitting there and going, no.
Yeah,
and so I haven't.
I have the same thing about the not the Americans, but the positivists.
I was going to say, is it Night Court or is it more? What was the show? It was Sybil Shepherd and what's his name? Moonlighting, right? The same thing, right?
Yeah, no, it's exactly the same thing. Yeah, no, I would just say that the Americans was maybe my favorite show ever, and it incredibly moving, and I think about it all the time. But for the same reason, I can't watch The Chair, which is this new show, precisely because, like, the joke, of course, is that to be the chair is the worst job you could ever have. And for the show, I know presents it as being like this great achievement when, like, that's like the worst thing you could be as the chair. But also, I have that sense of like I know what academia is like, and I feel like I wouldn't enjoy it.
For what it's worth, I had the exact same thing with anything related to social media. So, like, I can't watch, like, Silicon Valley. Everyone's like, you would think it's so funny. I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Like, no, I would not. Like, or like The Social Network. I'm like, I can't with, like, I don't know. Like, yeah.
It's funny. I love great journalism shows, and
I do like those too. There
aren't that many of them, but when journalism is portrayed well, I think I really enjoy watching it. But then again, I've never had one that involves me.
What strikes you as done well?
Yeah.
What would you say is done well?
Start with All the President's Men.
I was just going to say the highest level is All the President's
Men. But the movie
Spotlight.
about Spotlight is terrific. The Post, though it has some the paper, though it has some stuff that is terrible about people that
3 Days of the Condor, isn't that about?
That's about an intel.
That's an intel
that's
thing,
about
right.
the CIA
He's an
operating
analyst.
domestically
Sorry, I was
with
like
Max
getting
von
mixed
Sydow as an assassin. It's a great, fun movie, but it's not in any sense real about anything. Is it called The Post, or the movie about the Pentagon Papers, which has some wonderful
with Tom Hanks?
No,
it's not. Sorry, I'm mixing it up. Sorry.
It's quite good. It's quite accurate in some respects. It's got incredible, for those of us who remember the old Washington Post building and the presses, the sets are perfect, literally perfect. The portrayal of Meg Greenfield is fantastical and has nothing to do with reality. But it's got some great. But the portrayal of Kay Graham is wonderful.
What's the show that Aaron Sorkin did with Jeff? Not Jeff Bridges. It was
Jeff
like
Goldblum.
No, it was like the really over the top.
Broadcast News. Wasn't it Broadcast News?
Was it Broadcast News? Yeah.
Was it William Hurt?
Newsroom.
William Hurt and
Holly
Hunter, right?
Yeah. That was like nothing like reality, complete garbage. Like, I thought it was so bad, but I mean, it was also just like not, I don't think, meant to be.
Richard Wattenbarger asks about Shattered Glass, all of the subjects of whom, except Stephen Glass, are friends of mine. Particularly Chuck Lane and Hannah Rosen, and this is an incredibly accurate movie in every detail, particularly the portrayal of the New Republic staff, particularly of Chuck, and Chloe Sevigny's hybridization of Hannah and Jonathan Chait. She kind of plays an amalgam of the two, is really, really well done. That is an excellent movie. And yes, I think Stephen Glass should be allowed to join the bar in California, which is a long conversation that we should have someday. But yes, he should be allowed to join the bar in California.
And then, so to part two of your question, Ben, a podcast with the creators I don't know. It might be. I mean, anybody who takes the time to do the research and produce something like that, I'm sure would be interesting just from the standpoint of how you bridge something based in reality and make it a compelling drama, because that's not easy to do necessarily. I mean, there is a skill to that. So maybe. Do you know them? I don't know them.
I don't. I thought it would be super interesting to have the. I mean, we could get Anna Chapman too, so we could have an actual American. We could have Pete Strzok, and we
don't
could
get Anna Chapman. Get some, yeah.
or Maria Boone.
I've heard a lot of interviews with them. They're very intelligent, the showrunners of the show. It's really terrific. But if you haven't seen the show, I think it would be like they would say something and you'd be like, I haven't seen it. So I feel like it wouldn't have that bounce to it. But has anything been written about the case that's accurate? About the illegals case that you were involved in, like magazine article, book, or something?
Yeah. So there's a British author who is published. I'm trying to remember his name, and I apologize to him for not remembering it. Who's done some good work both in terms of writing for newspaper articles, particularly dealing with their kids. The Boston couple had 2 kids who were born in Canada, and kind of writing about their experience and not only the work of what they did, but the psychological impact of being born to parents who were illegals and not knowing at some point what they were, and how that then impacts you as you come of age and you come to realize, either by design or by accident, when the FBI arrests your parents, about what's going on. He's done some great work, and I'll look it up now. And then of course my New York Times best-selling book talks a little bit about the case, but I think there isn't.
And Preet has talked about it too.
Who has?
Preet has talked about it too.
Because was he U.S. attorney during the time that was taken down? Because those were all kind of centralized in SDNY. Yep. I'm trying to remember if he was the U.S. attorney.
Yes, he was.
Okay, in 2010, right? Sorry, I'm looking up, trying to find the author's name. But it's a great. I mean, it is the totality of the story. And when you look at the span and scope of what went on, I think it's a great. It has the great markings of the potential for a historical novel of not only telling the historical story, but something that is compelling and that would draw readers in. So kind of the literary version of The Americans, I think, is yet to be written by some great incisive author, and it hasn't been done yet that I'm aware of, but I think it would make a great storyline.
David Botts, the floor is yours, except that we can't see you, but there you are.
There I am. Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Lynn, for bringing me on. Welcome back,
hey,
Mr.
thank
Strzok.
you.
Great to have you. I have 2 related questions. Question 1: if Congress demands certain records from telecom companies, are they off the hook if the minority House leader threatens them, the telecom providers? Question 2, totally random question: is threatening a party subject to a legal subpoena illegal?
Say the second question again.
Is threatening a party subject to a legal subpoena, and basically threatening them to not satisfy the subpoena, is that an illegal act?
I don't. So what gets very complicated, and I'm not an attorney, and we have very bright attorneys here on the panel. What gets very complicated quickly is the free speech and debate aspect, if it's a congressman doing that. And I don't know the answer to that. I know, it's funny because Andy Biggs, I think, was protesting that, this idea that telecom companies might turn over, I think what he was talking about, the content potentially of text that he was sharing in private moments with other members of Congress or outside of Congress that he felt might be invective, but nonetheless just written in the spur of the moment and non-indicative of anything beyond just emotion, was somewhat wry to me to see him arguing that those should be ignored if they were somehow inflammatory. I don't know when it comes to congressional subpoenas, there are enforcement mechanisms for that. It is an enforcement mechanism that initially comes out, to my understanding, and again, I'll defer to Kate and Scott and Ben, that there is both within the congressional authorities an ability to enforce those subpoenas, and if they're ignored, they can appeal or somehow call on the Article 1 authorities to help enforce those subpoenas. And I don't know the process, but I think what we've seen certainly with the last couple of sessions of Congress is a sort of degradation of the power or the authority of congressional subpoenas, and people much more willing to fight to comply or not comply, as the case may be. But I'll stop there because I'm getting way out over my skis in terms of my knowledge and expertise. And now, Scott, Kate, Ben, if you've got any thoughts on that.
That's more Ben's wheelhouse than certainly mine.
Definitely
The
not
answer is if it's done with specific intent to frustrate a lawfully constituted congressional investigation, I assume it could be an obstruction. What is it? It's 1812, 18 USC. 1512. So yeah, it's 18. The relevant statute is 18 USC 1512. 1503 may have it's 1512 B1 is the relevant language. Whoever knowingly uses intimidation, threatens, or corruptly persuades another person or attempts to do so, or engages in misleading conduct toward another person with intent to influence, delay, or prevent the testimony of any person in an official proceeding, or cause or induce any person to evade legal process, summoning that person to appear as a witness or to produce a record, document, or other object. So, whether it could meet the terms of that statute, I don't know. The statute is quite broad, and I don't know to what extent it does, the likelihood of its being applied in a situation like this is vanishingly small, frankly. Dr. Doom, your faceless microphone is on.
Thanks. When Afghanistan's government and army collapsed, Ben's immediate reaction was that it was a shanda, it was a moral shame, a security disaster. And since then, Biden has offered at least a view of what he says was his decision-making process. You've had a lot of experience with decision-making under uncertainty. I wonder what your analysis of Biden's decision-making and how reasonable or not is it?
I don't think the way that we exited Afghanistan was appropriate. I think this was a foreseeable chain of events that occurred. I don't know the cause of it. I mean, there was an interesting article about the way that people create teams of advisors, and I forget who wrote it, but talking about the sense of Biden's team is very collaborative. They're very like-minded, and their strengths or weaknesses when you create a team that people are very similar in outlook and supportive of each other versus people who tend to be more rivals. And you get disparate viewpoints, and they're, sometimes there are obviously strengths or weaknesses to both in terms of bureaucratic behavior. I don't think that his advisors served him well in the context of our exit from Afghanistan. There's nothing that I've seen that would lead me to believe that this was not predictable. And so to the extent that it was predictable to the extent that there was information out there that would indicate that something like this would occur. The rapid collapse was, a potential that event that were to occur. I think it is a little bit, more than a little bit, I think it is disappointing that there weren't better plans in place to have a more orderly departure that accounted for all the people who wanted to get out. So I think it is a valid criticism of the administration to say that the way we exited was poor and should have been better. I don't, to the extent that people sit there and say, well, whatever, the prior administration would have done would have been 1,000 times worse. While true, I don't think that, obviates the validity of saying this was not a good exit. So, I would hope that there's something that goes on within the national security staff, within the kind of senior levels of the advisory process to the president to sit there and say, why did this happen? I'm sure that's going on, and whether or not that then translates to a, kind of retooling of the advisory process, I don't know, but I hope it would.
All right. Before we go to Richard Wattenbarger, we have a question from Paula, which I'm going to read because Paula is not present today, and I'm also instructing you, Pete, to check your text messages because I have sent you a query. Paula asks, Pete, there is a lying game on the show that has been played a few times. Do you think that being an FBI official would make you a good liar or better at catching liars?
Great question.
Super great question.
To prioritize one, which one is better? Which one comes? So it's a comparison question, right? Does being an agent make you a better detector of liar or a better liar?
Let's talk about both. So the show, I don't know if you've seen any of these episodes, but I
wanted to do the I don't know, I think it's a Jimmy Fallon version, right, where they have two envelopes and they've got two people and one is the truth and one is a lie, and they sit there and they read it, and then the other group gets a chance to ask questions.
I just
to
want
decide,
you to come on and tell a counterintelligence story. Nobody will know except you and me, because I actually will know that it's false, because if it were true, it would be classified.
Ben, I could anonymize something enough to fool. So I think in general, given the nature of the FBI's work, in general, it gives you a better skill set to detect deception than it does to deceive. That's not to say that there isn't undercover work, that there isn't pretext type scenarios and work where you lie, and that is a skill. Both are skills. You can sit there
So in other words,
when
you'd be well positioned to have an instinct about whether Genevieve were lying, but you would not be in a particularly good position to deceive Genevieve if you were lying.
I think I would be in a better position than the average person to do both, just by the nature of interacting. There are two aspects to that. One is doing work where you're interacting with people all the time, where you're asking them questions, where you're interviewing them, where you're talking to them, where you're seeing how normal people respond, what the things are that they do, and just getting from one sense is just a gut of how truthful people versus deceptive people act, and some of it is the very formal study of behavioral aspects of what people do when they're telling the truth versus lying, and there are tells, and it isn't universal, but there are things that psychologists who study this and kind of create, in general in their courses, and there's professional education where you can sit there and the FBI and others send people to train on what those indicia of deception are. And so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, there is work that the FBI does, and it's not nearly as much as a CIA officer would do, where you're going out and you're essentially presenting yourself as something other than what you are, or a scenario other than what it is. And those things come together, right? So if I'm studying and I know that if somebody is being deceptive or avoiding something, if they tend to cover their mouth, or if they repeat the question, or if they look in a different direction than they do than if they're telling the truth and staring at you. I know that if I'm looking for that and somebody's deceiving me, that I'm looking for those things, that if I'm lying to you, I'm not going to cover my mouth or look away, that I'm consciously going to just try and be very open, hold my body language is open. So those things come together in a way that is both, I mean, I don't want to ascribe any sort of moral qualification to it, whether it's good or bad, but there's both a science and an art to it. Behavior is what it is. I mean,
but not to put too fine a point on it. Let's say you were, and this is about Paula's question, not about anything else. Let's say you were talking to, a senior government official, and and he showed
in a new workplace,
and he showed no indicia of lying at all, even though you knew that the information he was giving you was incorrect, and actually you knew that he knew that the information he was giving you was correct, because just hypothetically speaking for a moment, he would be aware that there would be a transcript that was available to you of a phone call he'd had with a Russian diplomat. Just hypothetically speaking, and this is all about Paula's question, not about anything else. The fact that there's no indicia of lying, and that you may write that in a memo, like, hey, no indicia of deception here, doesn't mean you believe he wasn't lying. It might mean, in fact, that you believe he was just really good at it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And
does anyone have any idea what you're talking about? I lost you.
I am sure that Tom McGuckin in the audience knows exactly what I'm talking about.
No, but this is like one of those.
Fun for all of us.
So no, but this is this is what makes this sort of work
this
fascinating.
It's all about Paula's question, Kate.
No, but and when you think about again what the study of people and human nature and human interaction, when somebody does not tell you the truth, there are a number of different reasons that might happen, right? One is they might be conscious and deliberately aware of the fact that they're not telling you the truth and that they are trying to lie and conceal that. And maybe they're good at it, or maybe they're horrible at it. And that tells you a bunch of things about their sense of their upbringing, their sense of morality about lying or not, their sense of ability to feel guilt, their sense of shame or not. And that's just in that one little category. There's a huge path in the middle of why somebody might lie and not tell the truth, but not really be aware of why they're doing that, or even know that they're doing that. Is it because they're ashamed of it? Is it because they've convinced themselves otherwise, that they're in some sort of state of denial? And you can sit there, and I'm not a psychiatrist. I haven't studied psychology beyond professional development type courses. But that sort of human interaction, every day you interact with people who aren't telling you the complete truth. And that's just the outgrowth of our societal interaction. That is accepted social interaction. And so when you sit there and you see somebody in a very high stakes scenario, in a very consequential interview, who is telling you something or not telling you something that is going to have a direct and immediate impact on their employment, their criminal exposure, there are 1,000 reasons why you sit there and say, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why did they do it? And then setting aside any, the extreme things, are they drunk? Are they under the influence of drugs? Are they mentally unwell? Do they have some sort of condition that's preventing them from understanding what the truth is, which is a whole separate, kind of category that you can't exclude. But it is a fascinating thing that people know when you're talking to them. If I'm sitting there and I'm projecting to you, I'm talking directly, I'm being very open with my hands, I'm looking straight at you, I am speaking with conviction, I am speaking in a way that are short and direct and full of facts and not ambiguous. Our natural instinct over millennia developed in interacting with other people. When you hear that, you say, I believe that person. Mm-hmm. And politicians, whether or not they know it or not, that is something that they do. Good ones do very well. It is something that people, when you can both have that instinctually, you can also know that and develop it. And so, when you're sitting across from somebody and they're telling you something that isn't true, all those questions come up, and the confounding thing is, in certain scenarios, the fact of the telling of an untruth when it makes no sense in the context is particularly confounding. And in some cases, in a hypothetical scenario you presented, is still confounding to this day. And the more I see, you can look at people after the fact and see what they say and do, and that informs your opinion of what might have been going on internally about their statements in terms of their understanding of the truth and reality.
I have a quick question. So one of the things that I keep thinking about through this explanation is the importance of a rapport and understanding the person that you're dealing with. Because if those things are so variable and individual specific, the quote that kept going through my head, which is cheesy, is the Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like, well, it was the truth from a certain point of view. So if you have someone who's self-deluded or has created a narrative that they are embracing totally, and it's still factually inaccurate, do you still get the same tells, or is that where really a lot of background work is so important?
No, you can. If you convince yourself that something is the truth, you're going to manifest that behaviorally as the truth. And so, whatever the actual course of events were, if I have set in my mind that something different occurred, when you're talking to me, if you pressure me, if you put things in front of me, I'm going to respond in terms of whatever my mental recollection of that event was. And so you're going to get yeah. It's like Lucy, right? At the little so and it becomes very hard, because then it's like, okay, so somebody is, again, they're manifesting as telling the truth. Is that because it is the truth? They believe it's the truth. They're just a really, really, really good liar. And there are a lot of really good liars.
You're not a doctor, but I am, because I don't have a hat yet that I can set from my iPhone, but I have Post-it notes sitting on my desk in a Sharpie.
Love it.
But I was going to actually say there was this amazing book on lie detector tests that was basically that there was I think it was a radio lab, or I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was basically all about a guy who had developed a foolproof way of getting through lie detector tests, basically because you could control certain aspects of the readings by clenching certain muscles at certain times. And so it would artificially elevate your blood pressure just a little bit, so that it would have a different reading, so that you could just just no matter what you were doing, you could do that. But the other thing that is really true is what you just said, and what kind of Genevieve says, which is that if you truly believe that what you're doing or what you're saying is the truth, that you will not have any of the tells of anything. So one of the best ways, they say, to lie is to basically create a fiction and recite the story over and over to yourself, and kind of walk yourself all the way through it and imagine it, or like an alibi, or to basically take a story that you already know and to use it as a way of kind of. So this is why I could never do our lie show, because I don't know, I don't really want to do any of those things, and I'm not sure I could.
Yeah, no, I mean, a polygraph is not. The polygraph is a tool. It's not a end-all, be-all of whether or not somebody's telling the truth or not telling the truth. It is sitting there and it's measuring how much you're sweating. It's sitting there measuring your respiration rate. It's sitting there measuring your heart rate. Most people who are not sociopaths, most people who are raised with a sense of moral right and wrong, if they lie, if they're confronted with a lie, are going to have some sort of physiological response. They are going to imperceptibly sweat more, or have their heart rate change, or have their respiration change. And in the hands of a skilled polygrapher, that is an extraordinary tool, that if I'm sitting and I'm talking to you, I'm interviewing you, and I see a slight change that is different, I use that as a cue, another little bit of information that I can use as I'm interviewing you. It isn't the sort of thing where you're sitting there in the polygraph, it's like, oh, that's a lie, oh, that's truth. That's not the case. So, I don't want to get into a discussion of how to, beat the poly, but it is designed with the idea that most people are raised in a sort of standardized normative experience of right and wrong and responses to shame and guilt. And if you get either people who don't have that, culturally, the really interesting thing when you look at polygraphs, when you look at polygraphers and, we're saying, hey, we want to go, and it happens especially with other members of the intelligence community, we want to go polygraph an asset who isn't American, who came from this culture or that culture overseas. If you have a different experience of what guilt is or what sort of the response to lying is, it's an entirely different skill set.
Because you would just have just as big a physiological response to something that's not lying.
But in the Western Judeo-Christian experience, if you lie, that is accompanied by a certain response, which isn't necessarily shared by different cultures. And so when you sit there and you say, "Hey, did you do something?" and the person says, "No, I didn't," depending on the different culture, you're going to get a different set of responses, and so you get it's very much a really interesting question.
You just gave me one more bullet point in my why lie detectors are bullshit.
They're not PowerPoint. Lie detectors are a powerful investigative tool, but they are not a truth-telling device.
Yeah. Their most powerful element is that people confess all kinds of things out of fear of them.
Fear, and people want to confess. People want to confess. You want to clear your conscience. At least, again, in a Judeo-Christian Western aspect of that, that's why, Catholics go to confession. Why people go and you want to unload your wrongdoing. You want to talk about it. You want to assuage your guilt. You want to share that. You want to unload that burden. And so if you get over that hump, somehow suspend that disbelief, or I can sit there and tell you, trust me, unload on me, you're not going to go get the death penalty. That catharsis of sharing is part of that interview process and the confession that gets that good interviewers will accomplish or try to accomplish.
Richard Wattenbarger, you are not going to get the death penalty, so unload on us.
Okay.
And the floor is yours.
I was going to say something really quickly.
Sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead, Richard. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, this question is a lie. Pete, when you went to the FBI, when you got there, you're young, green, and everything's new to you. What did you encounter that surprised you? Is it I would never associate this with the FBI, or was everything pretty much as you expected? Was there anything that blew you away?
That's a great question. I don't know, because I came out of the Army, which was like a hyper hierarchical, regimented experience. The FBI is very much the same thing, and certainly on the agent side it is, and I think the similarity comes in the context of if you are dealing with scenarios where you are, leading people or telling people to engage in things that are life or death scenarios, whether that's going into battle, whether that's, needing to use lethal force or not with a subject, you have to have you have to have a different sort of hierarchical experience where if somebody is telling you to do something, you do it because lethal force is involved. So there's a similarity in feeling to the experience of the military. So I don't know that anything necessarily surprised me. It was a very interesting application of the context of what you're doing, because it's entirely bounded within the law. So Title 18 is, you were investigating crime, and you're investigating crime to develop evidence and using that evidence to bring a case or not in the context of our system of justice. And so that is it binds your actions. It creates the four corners of what you're doing in a way that is very both limiting but also very precise. And then adding on to that, saying, okay, well, you're not, you, Pete, you're going to go work counterintelligence. So that's not looking and sitting there saying, did somebody, engage in stock fraud or do a bank robbery or Medicare fraud or whatever the case may be, but you're going to go look at what all these foreign powers are doing from an intelligence collection perspective of the United States, which isn't bound by the criminal code, but it is the entirety of the experience being kind of existing within the context of the pursuit and investigation of justice was a very interesting way to shift perspective.
We are going to leave it there. Pete Strzok, you're a great American, but
Thank you,
not
Dan.
a great one of the Americans. Sorry, I've been saving that all day.
That was really good.
I was proud of it. We will. I still want you to come back at a time and place of your choosing to
Wait,
tell.
when did you take off your tie? When did that happen?
In the
Early
middle of the
on.
show, it
When I
happened.
realized there was no award, when I realized there was no speech, I'm like, well, damn it.
So when are you going to come back and tell a counterintelligence story that may or may not be true?
We'll figure it out. I want to come on. I want you to pick a second guest, and we will each exchange. I want 2 envelopes, the truth envelope and the lie envelope, and we'll pick 1 or 2 for each other, and we'll quiz it. We'll quiz it.
Shylock?
And what's in the envelopes?
One is a true story, one is a lie story. And then whoever it is says, I want envelope 1, and I open it up, and I
And it
tell the
says
story.
lie. And it,
No,
you
I
tell
just tell the story.
That's in the
I
envelope.
tell the story, and you don't know if it's a lie or truth.
Do you know?
Of course I know.
How do you know? Because you're just telling the story
Because
that's in the envelope.
Yeah,
Because I'm writing the envelope about my stories.
Oh,
one of which is
so
a
each
one of which is
person-
a true one of which is a true story about Pete, one of which is a fake story about Pete.
Shailesh
And we
said
sit there-
earlier to do it with John Cipher.
Woo!
Oh, John's such a
CIA,
liar,
CIA
though.
versus FBI.
So yeah, you should do it with. Would you want to do it with a CIA person or an FBI?
I'll do it with a CIA person. I'll do it with a random academic. I'll do it with somebody who is a media personality. Somebody who went to
Stump
jail. Whatever.
Pete
You let me.
Strzok. That can be the entire
No,
week.
but it's no. My batting average would be like embarrassingly horrible. So
Wow, we're gonna have to do this.
Struck by the truth.
absolutely.
But before that, we have tomorrow's guest, Lisa Page, and Friday's guest, Ada Palmer, finishing up the 500th episode. All that'll start 22 hours and 56 minutes from now. And until then, KK?
We don't have fun anymore, but we can have very cheap psychiatric help.
5 cents.
Just if you
5
just DM me. Just DM me.
We'll see.